Welcome to MicdinPod. We are your hosts, Jeremy and Val.
That's me.
We are not experts, just parents of 2 college athletes and 2 in youth sports.
On this podcast, we're bringing together athletes, parents, and coaches to talk honestly about youth sports recruiting, pressure, identity, and everything in between.
Thanks for being locked in with MicdinPod. Our kids do a lot of sports. They do, football and basketball and lacrosse and everything. But one of our blind spots is hockey. And I don't know anything about hockey. I don't know anything about kids in the recruiting process or, the youth hockey leagues and stuff. But I do know somebody, a good friend of mine, the Providence College hockey coach for the last 18 years. 18?
15, I think.
All right.
I hope to make it 18.
He is the Providence College hockey coach for the last 15 years. He is a 2-time national champion. One as a head coach, one as an assistant coach. Nate Leaman.
How's it going?
I have questions. I have so many questions. First of all, Nate, welcome to the show. I have so many questions about youth hockey. Can you just tell me, I know you didn't play until you were a teenager. Where does it start for youth hockey?
It's a younger starting sport, but first of all, thanks for having me. And I hope to be able to provide some sort of help or some sort of content. But hockey is generally a sport that kids start younger. But if you start late, it doesn't mean you can't catch up, but for whatever reason, most kids start hockey at 5, 6 years old. The main learning curve for hockey is learning a new form of transportation, learning to skate, and that's, it seems to be the first 4 or 5 years of the sport, a limiting factor. The kids that pick up the skating, tend to move up to the next team or something, the kids that might get frustrated and say the sport's, maybe not for me. But it's a very passionate sport, and most kids that try it really like it because it's fast. You're kind of always moving. So, I think it keeps their attention really well. And I think generally, kids have a good time being a teammate in the sport. So, like you said, like I didn't start playing hockey till I was 13, but I fell in love with it. I was always a soccer player, and I just fell in love with the sport, and the sports overlapped, meaning that a lot of the concepts in soccer were concepts in hockey. So the thinking part of it, I was able to get. I had to catch up with the skating, and I did a lot of that, to get up to speed.
So you have 3 boys. Are they playing hockey right now?
2 of them do, yeah. 2 of them. One of them is in high school, plays for LaSalle Academy. He's going to move on to prep school next year. And then my middle boy, Bryce, plays for a travel team, which is like AAU, but on the hockey side, pretty competitive, things like that. And he's going to move to high school next year. Our youngest, Nolan, just never had the interest in playing.
Oh.
So, and he's going to be the tallest. And I guess in gym class this week, he had the longest, the furthest long jump. So you and I both know what that means. It means he's got a lot of explosive. He's got a lot of explosiveness, but he's just, he rolls with the punches. He's never really kind of shown it. But both Ty and Bryce, my oldest and middle, play hockey and baseball, and it's been a real challenge. What I find, and I'm sure we'll get into this stuff later, but it's been a real challenge being a 2-sport athlete in today's, youth sports. It's everything is geared towards you pick one and you do that year round. And I've tried as long as possible to keep them doing both, 2 sets of friends, 2 different sports, 2 different mindsets in the 2 sports. And just because I thought, as a parent, I just thought that someday later in life, that they might have want both, And so, I think we're a little bit of a unicorn in trying to do both right now.
So you said you didn't start playing until 13, and does that mean you started skating around that time too, or were you skating way before then?
I started skating then.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's encouraging to other, athletes and parents to say, it's okay to like slow play it a little bit and let the kids figure out some other sports and skills before they and development before they get there. But so what would you tell somebody coming into it at 12 years old, that you came into at 13, get into the skating? Are you jumping right into, tournaments and these showcases, or are you just working on the development and really focusing on the skating the most?
The skating, the skating, and getting at a level where you can touch and hold a puck a lot. In the course of a hockey game, as you move up and up and up, you have less and less time with the puck, meaning that the top players in the NHL might hold the puck 40 seconds a game.
Wow.
Maybe a minute a game. Like your top players.
That's it.
Yeah, so it's a fast game. It's on and off your tape a lot. Maybe a little bit more, but it's no more than 2.5 minutes for sure. In a game. So, yeah.
It's funny. I went to the Cambridge Fire Department has a hockey team, and I went to a game, and the guys were on and off so fast, and I'm like, why are they getting off so fast? They just got on, and one of the guys said to me, he's like, why don't you try to just run and sprint back and forth 3 times and tell me that you don't need a break? And I thought for a second, I was like, I didn't think about it like that, because in my head, skating is just, you're just gliding. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not running. So I didn't even think it was how strenuous those sprints could be.
Yeah. I mean, it's all out. I mean, it's an all out sprint for, like when you're younger, you can do shifts that are a minute 20. If kids stay out longer than that, you see it just like they just tank,
Yeah.
As you get older, your shifts are more like our shift time is like 40 seconds.
Wow.
So a big part of the sport,
That's unreal.
and that's what is so different about our sport. Like there's only one player that plays the whole game, and that's the goalie.
Wow.
So the goalie has the biggest impact on the game.
Yeah.
No different than a pitcher. And one thing that a lot of people don't, I guess, why I said earlier it's a real team game is that when you take basketball, for example, every time you go down the court, your best player can touch the ball.
Yeah.
Your best player can touch the ball every time down the court. Michael Jordan probably touched the ball like 90% of the time, over half court when they're out of possession. In hockey, your best players playing 23, 24 minutes out of 60.
Wow.
And then the amount of time he might actually have the puck during those shifts is a lot more limited. So, like even though you have best players, their impact on the game compared to other sports is far less. It's not that a best player like a Connor McDavid impacts the game. Like he's the best player probably ever to play. But it's harder for those top players to impact the game, and that's why it's a little bit more of a team game. It takes it takes 18 players and a goalie to win at our sport.
Wow.
So
Do you? So we've talked a little bit about physicality, right, and multi-sport, but how does mentality and sports IQ, and you're saying like team sport, and you're only coming in for 40 seconds and coming up, there's a lot of, I mean, that's like a dance, there's a lot of things that have to be in sync for the other players to really be aware, because basketball, they come out and they're like, I got number 5, you know what I mean? When they sub out like who they're guarding. How does that work with hockey in order to keep everything cohesive with that much movement?
There's what they call it systems, like there's positions that, and it's a lot of reading off teammates, you brought up IQ. Like IQ, the biggest thing, and I've seen my boys go through it, And, you know, I've probably talked to at least 150 parents about it. Like, everyone wants to determine who the best kids are when they're 8 and 9. And then everyone wants to determine who the best kids are when they're 12 and 13.
Yeah.
And then everyone wants to determine who they are when they're 15. And the one thing I keep telling the parents is that the kids that can process the game, because it's a fast game, the kids that can process the game in their head are the kids that are able to keep moving up the ladder. You see a lot in our sport. It starts where, you know, someone is a better skater than everyone else, so they can carry a puck and fly through everybody and go and go and go. But then puberty hits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when puberty hits, everyone's mechanics change. Okay. So, you know, like, I've seen kids that were really choppy, not fluid skaters. They hit puberty, their body changes a little bit, their legs get longer, and they've really changed their skating.
Yeah. Everybody starts catching up, right?
Everyone starts catching up. You know, you mentioned, we were talking earlier, I didn't start till I was late. I had one huge advantage I had in starting late is I learned all the mechanics of the skating stride, and I could process what coaches were telling to me. When you're trying to talk to a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old when they're starting about knee bend and pointing your toe and your stride length and how your support leg has to be at 90 degrees and under your body. And these kids
You're
are going
telling
like,
me that right now.
Yeah, the kids are going like, oh, whatever.
About.
You know, like it's going in one ear, out the other. Like it just is. You know, when I started later, I was able to, like, when people were teaching the mechanics, I was able to, like, get the mechanics right. So I actually think, you know, looking back now, it was probably an advantage in some ways that I did start late, because I could formulate what someone was saying to me and process it. But back to that original point is, I'm sure you guys have seen it too with your kids. Like, there's ultimately the most important thing in ice hockey is your brain. And there's some kids that have been able to, that are just freak athletes and can get through on natural ability.
Yeah.
There's very few though, like very few. And we want to sensationalize all those kids. Like, we want to sensationalize Sidney Crosby because he was doing it when he was 9 and now he's doing it when he's 38. You know, he's still like a great, great player. But those guys are few and far between. What I've seen, you know, 99% of the time is the kids that they can keep processing the game. The game keeps getting faster and faster as they get older and older. And the kids that can keep processing the game are the kids that can keep moving on and moving on. And they learn how to make up for, like, a lack of maybe skating or a lack of, you know, quick hands or something like that. They're smart enough to get through it. They know they know how to tailor their game to what their strengths are. The other thing I found is that there's a lot of those kids that were really, really good when they were young. Because they were such good skaters, because they were able to dominate, the IQ didn't come along.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
And what you find a lot of times in our sport is there's like a wall that a lot of guys kind of hit. And some kids can keep getting through it because of their IQ, and some kids just kind of hit that wall. And it's frustrating for the kids. Some guys can get through it, but not always the best player when they're young becomes the best player when they're old in our sport. Okay. So
I think that's huge for parents to hear, you know, because you're right. There's such a sensationalist, like, mentality on, you know, their kid getting recruited and their kid played in college, and we keep saying, like, that's just like that's such a small percentage of it. And when he started coaching, he would say, I just want the kids to love the sport, right? And love the sport and help them to be coachable and help them to want to show up for each other, because whatever sport they play, and I think it was when he was coaching basketball, and there was, I think, 5 or 6 girls that ended up going to play Division I. Only our daughter played basketball. They all went in different sports, but, like, it taught them something else about working together on a team. And there's a lot of parents that I'm just getting caught up with what they're seeing with NIL and the money for the kids that are being made, and not focusing on the the mental development, because there's so many developmental physical things out there, that the mental piece of the game and watching the game as a spectator and learning from other
Yeah.
players is, I think is lacking. And I mean, even our kids, we used to say, like, do you guys even watch soccer? Like, it's not
Yeah,
always
yeah,
game
yeah.
time. Like, do you even watch
Yeah.
basketball? Like, who plays your position, you know? And and that's good. And it's good to hear. Like, I think parents need to hear that, like, focus on some of the other developmental things, because I do see some of the kids breaking down when they're not with their friends and they start to maybe excel and go in a different direction, or their friend goes in a different direction. They, the mental challenges arise, and, and then that affects the physical.
Yeah. I think as a parent, like, you got to ask yourself, what do I want to get, what do I want my child to get out of it? And I've always, my wife and I have always, we want our kid to be a good teammate first and foremost, you know what I mean? And that's what, that's what, long, and I tell our players this in college all the time, like, long beyond you're gone from Providence, what your teammates are going to remember most is how you treated your other teammates, and if you were there for them, if you would battle for them. So, first and foremost, being a good teammate. Then the second thing, like, as a parent, we want our kids to learn is adversity.
Yeah.
You're learning to show up when things get tough, learning to battle through things when things get tough, and learning that you don't control, as you mentioned, you don't control a lot of things. It's how you approach it, what's your attitude, how are you helping your team, be part of something and doing your part, and so, if our children learn to be great teammates and be positive with their teammates and be a good kid, and then also learn how to battle through adversity and learn how to compete, I think that's something we all want, is you want your son, whether it's the game's at 6:30 in the morning or midnight, whether it's raining, whether it's whatever, like, we want to teach you to show up and try your hardest. You're not always going to be perfect. You're never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect, So, but the effort is what counts, because those are the things I think as parents, like, you're hoping to get later in life, is that, that's what you want out of your children. You're just trying to get them prepared for, when they're on their own and what they're going to have to face. So that's what, look, I mean, like, as a parent, you're always rooting for your kid and things like that. But, like, if the big picture thing is, like, am I putting my child in a position to, to be successful after whatever? And that's where I think you see a lot of, you see a lot of talk now is, are the parents creating the path, or is the child creating the path? And the kid has to create the path. You got to let the child create the path. You got to let their work speak for itself, and not intervene as a parent. And I think that's the, that's probably the challenge for all parents. I think your point about watching sports is very valid. I mean, I think that there's sometimes I'll catch my boys, like, watching, and then sometimes, like, my boys are falling in love with golf too. The Masters is on last weekend.
Yeah.
And they're outside, hitting golf balls in the backyard. You know what I mean? But it's like, guys, this is the best golf you'll watch of the whole year. Like, this is the most intriguing. But no, and I think part of it is like, they get caught up with their phones. They see, the kids these days, the phones have affected everyone in the fact that I need it instantly. I gotta, I can watch that I can watch that shot instantly, So I think they're watching some things, but they're watching it in different ways. For our team this year, we set up an Instagram page that just our team could go to, and we put all of our content there.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
We put, like, even though we would do a scouting report, on a Thursday before a game, we put it in the Instagram page also. Because we know like it's going to come through the reel and they're going to flip through it. If there was a motivational quote, boom, we would list our we would list our practices in there, like all of our practice plans, what we were doing that day. We list our schedules in there, like all their content we put to there to try to kind of meet them in like try to understand that we got to meet them. Where they're at.
That makes sense.
And the other thing I found, that that's really changed in my time, we have a nutritionist, we have an academic support person. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we got a pretty special academic support person, and she was younger, and she started coming down and watching practice. And after practice, we have kind of a kitchen area in our locker room, and she would just go there and hang out. And our guys were coming off the ice practice, like in half gear, sweating, and just go sit down with her, and go spend time with her. And then we got a nutritionist 3 years ago, and our nutritionist started doing the same thing. I was like, Len, can you just come down and hang out in the locker room twice a week? And it's the same thing. Like, so what I found is that I think there's what I found with our players now, there's a little more anxiety for them to probably go to someone's office and talk to them about something.
Yeah.
But if that person comes in their world, they want them.
Yeah,
they want them big time. You know what I mean? Like I could not. And so now, like, our academic support person comes down the locker room Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's like our guys will sit down with her, like for a good like half hour, 40 minutes, just talking about like, this professor wants this, and I got this coming up and this, and what do you think about this class next year and stuff, and they've been able to connect with them. So, we're talking about the phone, we're talking about watching things. It's, I've found as a coach is like, I just have to find different ways to connect now.
Yeah.
And the traditional way of connecting, maybe the way I was coached, or the way, it's not there. It's not there as much anymore. I think there's more anxiety with kids, and so finding ways to try to connect with them and trying to get in their world a little bit has been something that we're trying to morph, and it's something that we've had a challenge with.
I love this because I've heard of coaches taking phones away from players and saying no phone this time, and instead, like. I don't think it does any good for these kids. But what you're doing is meeting them at where they want to be met. You know what I mean? And you're saying, you could have your phones, but I'm going to be there so we can have this conversation. I think that's genius, man. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I just trying to meet them, because it's like coaching is about messaging. Coaching is about, like, coaching is not about, this is the way it is, you got to do it my way or leave. No. Coaching is about getting them, to realize what they can be, but then also getting them, finding ways to get them to where they need to be, and we grew up more in the military, Navy SEAL. It's this tough way, coaches, or you're not good enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not today's coaching. That it's just not. It's like if you're going to be that way, you're going to struggle. And believe me, like I'm more old school than I am new school, so I have to work at it. But it's about it's about evolving and morphing and getting the kids. It's ultimately getting them to understand your message and getting them there. Whatever way it may be. So.
I mean, I think that's huge. I think that's huge. Like, obviously, like as a coach, you're pivoting and you're reading the room of like where the kids are at, which I think they buy into it more because you're respecting them at their level. But the other piece of it, I think that on a parent side, for when kids go to college, they lose a community, right? And they lose a community of maybe parent support, depending on where they are in the country. I don't think I know. I wonder sometimes if coaches realize this. You know, for our kids, they would get home and they talk at the dinner table. We're talking about other things. We're talking about the teachers. We're talking about the nuances in their day. And so when they get to college, well, they're not necessarily talking to that roommate, but they do want that from another adult, another trusted adult, some of those runoffs during the day that actually relieve a lot of stress that might be impacting them as now an athlete, as a student, playing at a higher level, whether it's Division I or Division III, they're away from home. And I think that and parents don't know, how do we help them? Because you're not seeing your kid on a regular basis to see that maybe those things are affecting them. And your kids don't even often know it and know how to ask for it. So I think that's such a huge thing for a coach to say and to recognize that, even though, like you said, you're a little bit more old school than new school, that they need that. They're still kids. And I think when they get to college, a lot of times they're like, well, they're 18. They have to sign off on you saying that you want this information. I'm like, yeah, but I still pay the bill. And like my kids still need services. And a lot of times you get there, you don't know what services are there. You don't know how if there's a nutritionist necessarily helping them. You might know that there's a nutritionist, but like, I know my kids aren't going to them all the time. So the fact that you're putting that in front of them to utilize the resources, is so huge in their growth experience as a human, right? And to help them still build those communication skills that are necessary for them to leave college and actually be successful, as humans, not as athletes, but as just a human being. So, I mean, like applause to you for that, for recognizing that and working on that, because I think most parents really I think most parents would appreciate that. And parents don't know what they don't know when their kids get to college as far as what they need. You don't even know what the questions to ask, but a lot of times, like, especially when you go through recruiting, they're telling you this, 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 and this. And you're like, okay, this all sounds good. But then until your kid struggles or the grades dip or something, and then you're trying to find out more information. So the fact that you have resources for them kind of in their face and you're normalizing, utilizing them is awesome.
Yeah.
Nate, I feel like we did this podcast to bridge the gap between, parents and coaches and, athletes and coaches. And so but I think what you're doing right now is you're kind of bridging the gap between coaching and coaching, because that right there that you said can reach other coaches and say, I'm doing this wrong. You know what I mean? Me taking the phone away from these kids is wrong. Maybe I should put the nutritionist in front of the kids instead of having the kids go to the nutritionist, because I'm not going to an adult when I was 18 years old. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that. I'm not going to see my guidance counselor unless you make me. I'm not going to see a nutritionist unless you make me. You know what I mean? That's just the type of guy I was. So I think putting them in front of them is beautiful, man.
An agent, all of our players have agents, and an agent said something to me about 4 or 5 years ago that really stuck. And he wasn't talking about one of our players. He was talking about a call he had just had with another coach at another school. And he said, he's a good guy, but he started venting. He's like, is it so hard? Is it so hard for you guys? Is it so bleeping hard for you guys? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? And he's like, is it so hard for you guys to say hi to a kid every day? And I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he told me the situation, with a coach at another school. He said, like, and he's like, and, what happens, I think, a lot is that, Val was talking about is like when there isn't enough communication between a coach and a player, and I'm not talking about like, this is your role, this is like, they just start putting stuff in their head, guessing what the coach is thinking. And 90% of the time it's wrong. And I have a meeting at the beginning of the year. I tell the guys this. I tell the guys, I said, guys, like, understand, like, like my job, I might have 700 things that I'm thinking about that day, let alone my family and my kids.
Yeah.
So I tell them, like, if at any point, you you have a question about something, you have to ask me or one of the assistants. You have to, you know. But I thought the agent's point was, was really valid, is that as coaches, like, you have to say hello to every kid every day. You have to say hello to every kid every day, period. Because if not, if you walk by somebody, they're going to wonder what you're thinking. And those kids start putting thoughts in their mind, and they have no idea that I just came from an athletic department meeting and they want to cut 5% of my budget or something like that. Like they have no idea, but like, if you don't say, and so, there, any day that our guys, that I'm around our guys, like yesterday, we're officially kind of in our off season, but the guys have a lift. Now I had 2 guys have surgery yesterday. So I rolled, like I was talking to both those guys before, after, their parents before, after, but in the meantime, I rolled through the weight room, and I made sure that I checked in with every guy that was in the weight. What are you up to? How's it going? Hey, and it's not, it's like, like we have a lot of guys that were freshmen, and just kind of, hey, pretty cool being a college student this time of year, isn't it? Because I mean, like, now they're dealing with something, and 2 of them said it to me. He said, Coach, I can't believe how much free time I have, because they're not practicing every day. They just have an hour lift, and they're like, I don't know what to do with my downtime. I'm like, well, there are school, you do have books and everything, right? But like, just trying to get off hockey, talk with them, let them know that you're around. I think that stuff, because I think, again, like, just today's kid, they put a lot of things in their head. My middle son, Bryce, he had a baseball game last night. He was the starting pitcher. The coach doesn't know this. Like, I think the coach thinks he can really be a good pitcher, but like, the coach doesn't know that he hasn't been a starting pitcher since, since we were talking about it on the way home, since he was 12, like, and that was like town baseball, so I kind of, they have to ride the bus back to the school. So he texted me after the game, and his text to me was, what were your thoughts? And I texted him right back. I said, that's a great question for your coach. Like, and I told him when I got in the car, I said, Bryce, you have a really good coach. He does. He's got a good coach, He's got a guy that, first of all, cares, and he's got a guy that teaches. Like, they're so lucky to have the coach. They're lucky to have the coach they have. The guy's not, I mean, to coach middle school baseball and not have a son in baseball. He doesn't even have a son in baseball. The guy, basically, he's like, but anyhow, love this. He loves it, and he cares about the kids, and he takes them out for extra practices. It's like, they're so lucky. Yeah. But like, don't ask your dad. That's a good question for your coach. You know what I mean? So, I reminded him this morning, before school, was that, Bryce, you're going to ask your coach that question at practice today, right? He goes, yeah. I said, all right, good.
Good stuff.
Like, get him out of his comfort zone. Like, who cares what your dad thinks? Yeah. Like, what I mean? I don't know baseball, So, yeah, kind of go from there.
I do want to go back a little bit, because you were talking about the challenging part of having, focusing on one sport and going to multiple sports. What's your opinion on that in the youth leagues?
I want the boys to do it as long as they can. My oldest boy is he's really getting squeezed right now. With, I think he's getting squeezed. I could see, what I mean by getting squeezed, like, he's moved to baseball season, and because he didn't do baseball all winter, I can, he's a little behind some other kids right now.
And that's Bryce?
See it. No, that's Ty. Ty's the oldest.
Ty's the oldest.
But it was funny. Like, we were, when Bryce, the middle one, was doing his travel hockey, and they call it elite hockey. Everything's elite, right?
Yeah.
His coach, at one point he was doing flag football, hockey, lacrosse. He was in with lacrosse. He might have had baseball once a week in there too.
Wow.
So his elite hockey coach came to me and said, what happened was he wanted to do town flag football. And, East Greenwich town flag football is one of the funnest things, like, I've seen my kids go through. And, because some of our buddies are the guys that have been president of the league and have organized. But to see the kids that you go to the bus stop with all have their jerseys on a Friday and all be talking about the games that night. That's what it's all about. That's what it is all about. And it's like, and to see them all geared up all day, like you just see the joy, and they're with their friends and they're playing, and it's, boys and girls play together. I love that part of it. But anyhow, at the time, his travel coach, he had another boy on his team, and he told that boy that you have to choose between hockey or flag football.
Oh. And how old is this? What's the age at this?
This was either 10 or 11 or 12, somewhere in there. Bryce is 14 now. He's 13 now. It might have been 10.
Okay.
And the coach tried to say the same thing to me. And I told him, I said, I'm not forcing my child. I think he was 10. I said, I'm not forcing my child at 10 years old to decide what sport he wants to play.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know. I didn't play football. I never played football. But I didn't really know. Most kids don't really start football till high school.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's genius. You know what I mean? It's genius. It's like the kids are going to fall in love with it. They're all going to learn it together. Who knows if Bryce is going to love football more than baseball, more than hockey when he's 10 years old? Who knows? And for me, I want my kids to chase whatever their passion is. And I want to be there to support that. And I'm not going to make them choose when they're 10 years old. And if some other boys run into 6 tournaments in the summer, like I've been through it now with my oldest, it doesn't mean the world. It really doesn't. I've seen it now. Like it doesn't mean the world. So I'm glad I've taken the route I've taken with Bryce and Ty, because like I said, I don't know. There's something about me that just pictures them with their kids, and I want them to be able to coach baseball and hockey if they choose.
With hockey, I'm thoroughly confused on how a lot of things work. We have a lot of kids that play hockey that in our friend group, and it seems like there's some kids that after high school they play like a pro, but then some of them go and then go to college afterwards. So I don't understand that. So maybe you can explain that a little bit. And then how does that work with how people are doing NIL and with hockey versus other sports where they go right and play in college? Does that still apply?
Well, it's the timing of that question. Literally, the NCAA in the past 2-3 days, and I almost read something that I have to read after this about they're discussing. The NCAA is basically discussing having your clock start either when you graduate high school or you turn 19, whatever happens first. So what typically has happened, because hockey has always kind of started really a boom in Canada. Like hockey was a Canadian sport that then spread and spread and spread. It's played in Europe. It's played in the United States. They're very good. But like the culture, originally was a Canadian thing, and they have what's called junior hockey. And junior hockey, you can start when you're 16, 17, but you can play all the way until you're 20 years old.
Okay.
So the old path to the NHL used to be you played junior hockey, till you're 20. You leave home, you go play in some, town, you play junior hockey. And then after 20, if you're good enough, you sign a pro contract, you be in the minors. The real elite kids, could possibly make, the NHL. You get drafted at our sport when you're 18 is the first time you can get drafted, and then you can get drafted at 19. So almost all the players we have in college right now have been drafted, and they have agents usually when they're 16. So they have six, like I think this year we had 10 NHL draft picks of our 24 guys. The other guys that weren't drafted sometimes outdevelop the guys that are drafted. So just because you're drafted at 18 doesn't mean a whole lot. It's just, it's literally a snapshot at 18. These are the kids we view as you're going to make it or have a chance of making it. These kids we don't. And then what happens a lot of times is that the undrafted kid keeps getting better, and maybe the drafted kid doesn't. There's a lot of factors that go into that, but one of them is you just got told at 18 that we think you're good enough, and then all of a sudden entitlement comes in, and then the kid the kid that won't be told no, just keeps getting better and better. We had 4 guys on our team this year got offered NHL contracts. One of them signed. But curious enough, 2 of them were drafted, 2 of them were not drafted.
Oh.
So, and 3 of them are coming back to school, which is awesome. Because they're kind of betting on it. They know that they can keep getting better in college, and they would rather be in college, earning their degree than maybe play in the minor leagues. And they feel like they can still accomplish it, which I know they can still accomplish it. So anyhow, back to your question. So that was the old school. Now, junior hockey really took off in the United States and in Europe also. So the path for hockey is typically high school or prep school. Then, 1 to 2 years of junior hockey, and then come in. Okay. Now, when we're watching players, come
into college or
come into college.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we're watching players, we might commit a boy when he's 17, but he's not coming to college for 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or we might commit a kid tomorrow that's 19 years old that's coming to college this fall. Our freshmen. In our freshman class, like a freshman class is typically 6 or 7 players. We're one of the youngest teams in the country. The past 3 years, we've been in the top 10 youngest teams in the country, and I average 2 true freshmen a year.
Wow.
So most of our guys are playing a year after high school.
Okay.
It's hard. Sometimes it's hard for the American family to understand. But it's so competitive to get to our level that the kids have to be, they have to keep getting better. They have to keep getting stronger, to get to our level, to get to play at our level. There's 60 teams in NCAA Division I hockey. There's way more kids out there that are capable of playing.
Wow. So
it's much more of a buyer's market. There's more players out there than there are spots. So, and that's why kids have to play a little longer to do it, to get to us. I will say that there's, from a college student standpoint, all of our players have lived away from home at least a year. Most of them 2 years before they come to college.
Wow.
So a lot, they're not living on their own. They're living with families. They're living with billet families, but they are living away from their family.
What's billet families?
A billet family is like when they play junior hockey in a community, they find families that will take the players in, and so the players actually live with the family, So they're in, a good setting and in a family setting and things like that. But it's not their own. It's typically not their own. Very few kids are lucky enough to have a junior hockey team in their town.
Yeah.
Where they could,
yeah.
there'll be one or two kids on a team, but it's generally not a lot. So with that though, to be completely honest, like our freshmen are usually more mature than your typical college freshman because they've been at home. They're a year older. They've been away from home.
Yeah.
They've usually seen alcohol.
Yeah.
They're a little bit. They're generally a little bit more focused on knowing that they got to get their work done, their schoolwork done. So that is a positive in the hockey community. But the NCAA, what the NCAA is basically doing is they're saying no more of this 25-year-old athlete in college. They don't want that anymore.
Yeah,
and I do, there is a part of me that says, yeah, you're right. You're right on this. Like a college athlete should be, 18 to 23.
Yeah.
That, and that's what they've seen. So it really creeped into football and basketball. Some of the, Indiana was one of the oldest teams in college football. And it's been going on in hockey for forever. That's how some teams compete with other teams. They're just 1 or 2 years older than that that group, and the kids are older, stronger, and they're a little bit more mature.
Yeah.
So
I remember when I was a kid and coming into college, there was a guy that we used to play pickup ball with us, and he was 25, and I was like, he's a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was still a kid, and I'm like, this guy's a man. So I can't imagine having a bunch of 25-year-olds on a team playing ball. It's a different beast. You know what I mean?
And if you look at the national champions in hockey, like within probably the past 5 years, I've seen two of the best teams I've ever seen in college hockey, and one of them was the University of Minnesota. They literally had 4 defensemen that walked to the NHL, and
Wow.
and 3 of them are like $6 million players right now. Like
Wow.
they were that good, and then they had big time forwards. It was one of the best teams I've ever seen put together. And then also the team Boston College had, I think 3 years ago, they had 4 forwards and a goaltender that were as good as I've seen come through this level.
Wow.
Both of those teams lost in the national championship game to teams that were on average 2 years older than them.
Oh man.
So they were the most talented by far. But in that moment, older, stronger, more mature, and what I mean by more mature is able to stay with a game plan longer. And just have that maturity that we're able to just stay with it longer. We're able to stay with it longer, and they won those games. And they also had good goaltending, but they won those games. And so it'll be curious just if this NCAA changes this rule, which I think is probably going to happen. It'll be an advantage for us at Providence,
for young teams like you.
But it also, it'll be curious to see what shift it causes our whole sport, So
When it comes to you talk a lot about strength and physicality and stuff like that. For parents now that, their kids are playing hockey, are you seeing, or do you recommend, or what, kids lifting younger in hockey as a necessity, of like more so? And by younger, I mean maybe like in middle school, but like the strength that they need to compete because of this age, because of like how hockey is set up as a pipeline system, and compared to other sports. Are kids lifting, or should they be lifting younger?
I guess I think 14 is a decent age, but it's. I think what term, like lifting, or maybe, I don't know if strength conditioning is trying to be strong and flexible for your size, range of motion, putting together, most strength and conditioning in our sport has come so far, because it's not about pushing weight. It's and it's much more about being strong rotationally, being strong holding stances, being able in being flexible, being explosive, and I find our strength coach, and the stuff that I've pushed my boys to do has been more developing range of motion and developing strength at those ranges of motion, doing a lot of one-legged stuff, doing a lot, doing more explosive stuff with plyometrics. And I think the European kids were way ahead of that. Like in Europe is kind of always, that's always been the geared towards that. But I think that is a good segue to when they maybe get to like 17, and then maybe they're pushing more weight,
Yeah.
But the stuff I see the kids doing, which I do, I do think there's value in it, is mostly body weight stuff and being athletic in positions, one-legged, like a one-legged squat, or like your rear foot elevated, a one-legged, but can you get that knee to 90 degrees, that front knee, and then do it with a twist, then we're going to hold that position and we're going to twist. So you're teaching, they're teaching just as much athleticism as they are anything with, lifting or pushing weight or something like that, So
at this part in the segment, in this point in the podcast, we have a segment called the Orange Moment. When there's a moment, there's a lesson, and there's a shift. And Nate, we want to know what your orange moment was.
Back probably 4 or 5 years ago, I coached an under 20 team, a U.S. under 20 team, and it's like they put together the best players in the world, and they have a big tournament at Christmas time. And they choose the coach a year in advance, and you have a summer camp where you're with the kids for 2 weeks and evaluating your top 50 guys, and you got to get it down. But whatever, but I did Zooms with every player, and I trying to get to know the kids, and one of the questions I asked every one of the players was, what was your defining moment? And every one of them had been cut from something.
Oh.
And we're talking like the best 20-year-olds our country had. Like there's, I think almost every player on that team has at least played a game in the NHL.
Wow.
Some of them are big-time stars, from that team. Trevor Zegras, Cole Caulfield, Spencer Knight, just big time. But all of them had been cut from something. And whether it was like a U.S. festival or, a minor league team, and they all carried it. And I was like,
Wow.
And what it told me a little bit was like, every player is probably going to get cut from something.
Yeah.
And can you keep persevering after you've been cut? Like, what's your attitude? What's your mindset? What's after that? And a lot of these guys, like, that was their scar. Like that, it was a scar that they were wearing, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's like, it surprised me, that they would all say that. But, to a man, and I'm talking, and I did that interview with like the top 40 guys, to a person, they'd all been cut. Every one of them been cut. the other thing that maybe surprised me a little, not a little bit, but like every one of them, when you ask them, give me someone that's influential in their life, parents.
Yeah.
It was always parents.
Yeah.
It was always parents, and the kids often reflected to when their parents were there and positive for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Good
So,
stuff. Yeah.
but like, that was a good moment for me, is like to see even the best players in the world, like, were wearing, had a little scar when they got cut.
Yeah.
It's like, are you going to wear the scar proud? Is it going to motivate you, or are you going to, what's your mindset afterwards, So it's part of it's fun. You got to enjoy the journey. I'll tell you one thing. The other thing I found, I talk about this with my wife all the time, is when you are on a team where there's a good group of parents, it's so fun.
It's so fun.
When there's a good group, and I've found too that the coach can set that culture. Like if the coach really has a big picture, and knows when maybe a guy is struggling a little bit, but finds a role for that kid, so they're playing and they're part of it. You know what I mean? It's like all the parents are happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're as a coach and you can make good chemistry within your team, all of a sudden all the parents are like, getting along, and then you go after the game, everyone wants to hang together, and those times are fun. You know what I mean? Like those are the fun times when you see all the kids, at the table over there. Whether we won 6-1 or we got pumped 6-1, they're all over there giggling and hanging out. And I've tried to talk to some of the coaches too about some of the kids that, I see that might be a real smart player, but other people see them as not as good a player. But I'm like, dude, if you just give that kid a role, you go tell that kid, I want you to be our best penalty killer. You're going to have a happier bench.
Yeah.
You're going to have, that kid is going to be glowing. That all the parents are going to know that kid has a role and feels part of the team. You know, and then we're going to have a great culture.
Yeah.
We're going to have a great culture in the stands. We're going to have a great culture on the bench. We're going to be like, and this is what, this is what it should be, because, like youth sports for me, awesome, great. We all want our kids to do great, but I also love all those moments, at the restaurants afterwards.
I always feel like when you have coaching, when you have leadership, those things are so paramount. When people know the expectations, they tend to rise to them. So when a good coach actually gives those expectations, then it helps the kid, but it also backs the parents off to be like, yeah, that's not my kid's role, right? Because parents are just showing up looking for the glory, like they scored, they did, they saved a goal or whatever, or they dunked the ball, and it's like, yeah, that's not their role. You know what I mean? Their role is to be a distributor. Their role is to, sometimes their role is the energy on the field that they bring. They're the communicator, right?
Sometimes that role is more important than
100%.
And parents don't always realize that too. Like your kid's out there and your kid's seeing the whole field, and they're telling everybody else where to go as the D-back, you know what I mean? To help the goalie. And that's just as important. So not that I'm saying like the kid should always be judged, but like at a certain age, that is really helpful. And I always said to our coaches, that was really helpful for us, because we could say to our kid, like, hey, I know you want to play at this level, but I know your coach told you this. And like, I haven't seen you pick up a ball or run or do that. So it is what it is. The outcome will be what it is. But you were given these things to work on. And if you don't work on, then like
that's on you.
The outcome's on you. Right. So I don't think that the kids should be judged all the time, but I think at a certain level, coaches should give that to the parents, because I do think good parents back off when they know that, and we all need each other. The parents need that communication and that support to be like, yeah, my kid's struggling with this. Like maybe they can work with your kid, or who are you training with that like could maybe help my kid? And then, like, hey, well, my kid's still not doing it. I paid for this extra training. So we're not going to keep paying for it because you're not even doing it in the backyard. And then you can pull back from the expenses that I feel like people get kind of caught up in, just like drinking the Kool-Aid or following the pack, because they have something tangible that is workable.
Yeah. But I'll say one other thing to that is that, as parents, we also have to see. Sometimes we get so blinded by our own kid, and I'm not talking about us. I've seen situations where I've seen coaches talk to someone like that, and then the parent pulls their kid out of the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're going
Yes.
like, well, I'm trying to communicate with you. I'm trying to give you the information, and as parents, you have to be willing to take the information.
Yes. Yes.
You have to be willing to, it might not always be what you want to hear, but at least it's information and you have to take it,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why, again, Bryce pitching, I don't want, don't ask me.
Yeah, yeah.
Ask your coach.
Yeah,
and now
good
I'll hear
stuff.
what your coach says. And if your coach says certain things, maybe I can help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But you got a good coach, he's your coach, so
Good stuff.
that
Good stuff.
sort of thing.
Well,
So,
Nate, listen, we really appreciate you coming on. I know you have to run. Is there anything you want to promote or how
Nah.
can people reach you and find you? And I don't know if you're looking for recruiting or whatever, if there's recruits that want to reach out to you, anything we I don't
most
know. What do
kids
you want to
email
say?
me. They could get my email address at friars.com. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it helps somebody. I don't know if it will, it won't, but it's good. It's good therapy for me talking about my kids too. So
No, this is good, man. This is definitely helping
Yeah, we
people.
appreciate
This is
it.
definitely
Yeah.
helping people.
it's good. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for getting locked in with MicdIn.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
All right, thanks. We'll see you guys later.
All right.
Thanks for being locked in with MicdinPod.